Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for inviting us here in your residence and also for your readiness to answer our questions.
You're welcome. The pleasure is mine.
Thank you so much. It has been more than 2 years that you are holding the position of Ambassador of Switzerland to Georgia. So how would you assess your work, the work done by Swiss Embassy in Georgia? What kind of steps you have taken during this period in terms of deepening economic cooperation between two countries?
Yes, first of all, let me stress that the relations between Switzerland and Georgia are well rooted and marked by a high level of mutual trust, solidarity, and an excellent spirit of cooperation. This year, for instance, we celebrate 30 years of diplomatic relations, 25 years since the opening of our cooperation office, 20 years since the opening of the Swiss Embassy in Tbilisi, 12 years since the signature of the power protection mandate for Georgia in Russia, and 5 years since the signature of the EFTA-Georgia Free Trade Agreement. So this year is a year of multiple jubilees. Now, regarding our concrete work, my focus, of course, is to further develop and strengthen our bilateral ties. Our two countries are very similar. We have, in many aspects, a lot to share, also on the international scene. Recently, we made progress, especially in the cooperation on migration and tourism. We are approaching the cooperation on migration from different angles in the spirit of partnership. Georgia is, similar to Switzerland, a country of destination and transit for illegal migrants, and we can share our experiences. Secondly, we welcome very much that Georgia is moving towards a more quality-oriented tourism, helping to develop their very attractive touristic locations in a sustainable way, also to the benefit of the regions. And we are very happy to transfer Swiss know-how to Georgia, particularly in the hospitality sector.
Okay, as I know, the embassy is working right now on a new strategy, so it would be really interesting what will be included in this new strategy.
Yes, you know, we have a long-standing experience of our cooperation activities of 25 years here in Georgia, and we continue to engage. We developed a new program for 22-25. We will continue to support the efforts to Georgia to be a functioning democracy, to increase incomes and diversify its economy. With an annual budget of approximately $8 million a year, we are the 6th bilateral donor in Georgia, in absolute terms. If you divide this amount by the size of the small Swiss population, it makes us one of the biggest donors in Georgia, and this clearly shows our strong solidarity with the Georgian people. So what we will do, we will develop our programs, and we continue to strengthen especially the private sector, in particular in rural areas, with our interventions to improve agricultural value chains, for example on dairy products, on wool, honey and meat. And we also are very much engaged in modernizing vocational training. We can see today that since 2017, more than 22,000 young adults gained access to improved skills training in the agricultural area. And most of the graduates find jobs, and they increase the productivity in agriculture. And among these students, more than 1/3 are women. So this is very important, but I already said that vocational education training is a priority for us, and I'm very proud that we are part of the establishment of a Swiss agricultural school in the Caucasus. It's a private college located in Manissi in Kwemokartli. It specializes in the vocational education of livestock farmers and vocational education in the country to respond to market needs. So the school actually brings, and I'm very proud of that, the school brings Swiss know-how of mountain farming to Georgia. We are also preparing an initiative to facilitate the access to finance for rural SMEs, which is very important, especially now for the post-pandemic recovery phase. In all our interventions, we try to be concrete, and we try to work to the benefit of the Georgian people. We strive to include women and to empower them. We pioneered, for example, the concept of women rooms in municipalities where women can get access to different kind of services and advices.
Okay, and you also participated in convincing other Swiss company, Camille Bloch. This will be a really huge investment from Switzerland. As I remember, they plan to invest $10 million in Georgia, and they are going to open also a factory and also some plantations. So it is also interesting at what stage they are now.
Yes, this is a very exciting project, creating new working places in Kakheti. But not only that, it also brings a new creative technology for hazelnut plants to Georgia. So the roots of the plants go deeper, the stem of the plants are higher. This will increase the quality of the hazelnuts, but as well the volume of production. And at the same time, it reduces the irrigation needs. The implementation of this project, as I already mentioned, has started. It's, as most of the Swiss investments, a long-term project which will be beneficial to a whole region, and which also will have an impact in vocational educational training, but also might be very interesting in this technology to develop plants with your universities.
So do you know some other Swiss investors who have some projects and who plan to invest in Georgia?
There are indeed companies that are considering entering the Georgian market. You can understand that I cannot disclose any names right now. The interest is there, mostly in the area of transport and logistics and the energy sectors.
Okay, so how attractive is Georgian investment environment for Swiss investors?
Well, you know, from a Swiss perspective, Georgia is mainly competing with countries of Eastern Europe like Ukraine and Moldova, with the other neighboring countries of the South Caucasus, and with the Central Asian countries. Since the consumer market in Georgia is rather small, Georgia is more attractive for strategic investors that are long-term oriented and see Georgia as a hub for a wider region. And if we look at this, the geostrategic location, of course, is an asset, as well the well-developed web of free trade agreements and the European orientation of governments, of the governance. These are clearly assets for Georgia. The current international political tensions, the unpredictable relations with Russia, and the instability on the region are rather on the negative side of the balance sheet. But you know, it's always in these markets, it's always easier to open a business than to run it successfully on long term. But for us and for the Swiss investors, I think it's of utmost importance that the Georgian reform agenda remains on track and will be implemented swiftly. For investors, it's important to have an independent and efficient judiciary, to have a business-friendly and reliable authority in the regions as well as in the capital, and a well-educated workforce. And as I said before, in all these areas, we are engaged with our Georgian partners in all over the last couple of years, and we will continue to do so. I am personally convinced that the private sector and also international private sector has to play an increasing key role in the future development of Georgia and its economy.
To sum up, how would you assess, how many points would you give to Georgia's investment attractiveness? Let's say that maximum is 10.
This is a challenging question, of course, but I would definitely give 6 points.
Let's continue talking about business environment and investment environment. What kind of problems and challenges do you see here in Georgia that should be solved from the side of government? What would be your opinion and maybe advice or some recommendations?
Well, my impression is that the government is well aware of the challenges and well aware of needs to be done. So I don't think they need my advice for that. But of course, from our point of view, Georgia needs political stability, functioning democratic institutions, stable relations with the neighboring countries, respect of the rule of law, especially concerning an impartial judiciary, maintaining the achievements of the fight against corruption, keeping an open market orientation, pursue the reform of the education system, especially in vocational education and training, and continue sectoral reforms. In order to tap on its export potential, Georgia has to achieve the critical mass of production of goods. And to facilitate, for example, the purchase of agricultural land for foreign investors would be, in our view, an important contribution to this. Overall, it is, in my view, very important that the framework conditions of Georgia have to focus on high quality management of its niche products. This is crucial, in my view, to position the brand made in Georgia as a global quality brand, and I believe it's possible.
Okay, in 2017 you also mentioned already that free trade agreement was signed between Georgia and member states of European Free Trade Association,
Yes.
including Switzerland, so which allowed Georgian enterprises to enter into this huge market, without tariffs. So in your observation, what was the result of, what are the results of this agreement for Georgia?
Yes. Look, if you look at the figures, it's very interesting that in 2020, despite the COVID crisis and Nagorno-Karabakh crisis, the bilateral trade turnover between our two countries increased by 5.1% compared to 2019. This is remarkable. And secondly, last year, Switzerland had a negative trade balance in favor of Georgia of more than $50 million. In 2020, Switzerland was number 8 export market for Georgian products. And Switzerland was last year the second importer of Georgian products in value of all EU and EFTA countries. So this being said, our economic exchanges are already quite high, but certainly there is room for improvement, and I think it is important to try to further diversify the trade relations.
Okay, it was. I was surprised when I found out that we export to Switzerland more than we import from Switzerland.
Yes.
And from exported products, large share is on precious metals.
Yes.
It is also very interesting. Why?
There are two main factors of it. First, Switzerland is an important global trading hub for commodities. And second, our watch and jewelry industry has, of course, an interest in having high quality precious metals. This is a basis for their production, so they use this. So this is, I think, the answer of that.
Okay. And what other products might be potentially interesting for Swiss people in order to increase export from Georgia?
Well, I think first and foremost, again, the niche products. I think Georgia should continue to further develop its focus on quality niche products, especially in agriculture. But in order to be competitive in price, a sufficient quantity has to be produced here in Georgia, especially in order to keep the transport costs relatively low and to be competitive on the European markets. Secondly, in my experience, Georgians are very creative people. And we are living in the age of digitalization and the development of new technology. This is an opportunity for Georgia. I met a very vibrant startup scene in Georgia, and there might be a potential in blockchain and fintech technologies coming out of Georgia, definitely. And the third interesting area might emerge for global niche products in medical technologies and pharmaceuticals.
Okay, that's interesting. And finally, my last question will be about mountain resorts, because Switzerland has huge experience in this direction.
Yes.
And many Swiss mountain resorts are open now. So it would be interesting, what kind of results do you have? Is it source of infection? Because you know that in Georgia, mountain resorts are still closed, and there is a fear that it might be a source of infection. So, so what is experience of Switzerland in this regard?
Well, depending on the regional pandemic situation, we had both open and closed ski resorts. So we have a very decentralized approach in the fight against the coronavirus. In general, we did not see an increase of infections because of the opening of the ski resorts. However, in areas with international tourists, we experienced locally a higher spread of virus mutations, and the authorities had to act swiftly to impose quarantine and intensive testing measures. So it was a mixed experience, so to speak. It did certainly not contribute to contain the virus, but you know, it is simply impossible to impose a skiing ban on the Swiss people.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.